Inflammation is not the enemy you've been taught to fear. It's a biological fire alarm designed to protect you. But the real danger begins when that alarm never shuts off, when your immune system stays locked in attack mode and slowly starts damaging your joints, your arteries, your brain, and even your DNA. Most anti-inflammatory advice focuses on suppression, on silencing the noise, but research shows that suppressing inflammation without resolving it is like muting a smoke detector while the house is still burning. This is where omega-3 fatty acids fundamentally change the story. When EPA and DHA enter your cells, they don't just block inflammatory pathways like NF-κB or COX-2, they physically integrate into your cell membranes, displacing inflammatory omega-6 fats and altering how your immune system communicates at a molecular level. Once inside, these fats are enzymatically converted into specialized compounds called resolvins and protectins, molecules so powerful that researchers describe them as stop signals for inflammation. These compounds don't blunt the immune response, they complete it. They tell immune cells when the threat is gone, when tissue repair should begin, and when collateral damage must end. In clinical studies, resolvins have been shown to reduce inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and IL-6 while accelerating healing in joints, blood vessels, and even neural tissue. This matters because chronic inflammation is now linked to over 50% of global deaths, driving heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, and neurodegeneration. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, can temporarily reduce inflammation markers, but its absorption is notoriously low, often less than 1%, and it does not generate these resolution molecules. Omega-3s do. That's why populations with high omega-3 intake consistently show lower rates of cardiovascular disease, depression, and inflammatory joint disorders despite consuming similar calories. In fact, studies published in journals like Cell and Nature have demonstrated that resolvins actively shut down neutrophil infiltration, prevent excessive immune activation, and restore tissue balance after injury. This is not symptom management, it's biological closure. When inflammation resolves properly, insulin sensitivity improves, arterial plaques stabilize, brain signaling becomes clearer, and pain decreases at its source rather than being masked. This is why omega-3s are now being studied as therapeutic agents for conditions ranging from rheumatoid arthritis to traumatic brain injury. The shocking truth is that most people are inflamed not because their immune system is broken, but because it never receives the chemical signal to stop. Omega-3s provide that signal. They don't fight inflammation harder, they fight it smarter. And when the immune system finally hears the message to stand down, the body doesn't just survive, it begins to heal. Most people believe they're protecting their health when they swallow a fish oil capsule, but what they don't realize is that many of those capsules contain fats that are already damaged before they ever reach the bloodstream. Omega-3s are extremely fragile molecules, and when they're exposed to heat, light, or oxygen, as happens during industrial extraction and storage, they oxidize, forming lipid peroxides that can actually increase inflammation instead of reducing it. Multiple independent analyses have found that a significant percentage of commercial fish oil supplements exceed recommended oxidation limits, meaning people are paying to consume rancid fats without knowing it. This is where sardines change everything. Sardines deliver omega-3s exactly as nature designed them, bound within a whole food matrix that protects EPA and DHA from oxidative damage during digestion and absorption. When researchers compare whole food omega-3s to isolated supplements, they consistently find higher bioavailability, greater incorporation into cell membranes, and more reliable reductions in inflammatory markers. Sardines are also one of the lowest mercury fish on the planet because of their short lifespan and low position on the food chain, which is critical because mercury itself is a potent inflammatory toxin linked to neurological damage and metabolic dysfunction. On top of that, sardines are naturally rich in selenium, a trace mineral that acts as an internal antioxidant shield, neutralizing free radicals and preventing omega-3 fats from breaking down inside your body. This selenium omega-3 pairing is so powerful that studies show it enhances cardiovascular protection far beyond omega-3s alone. And then there's the calcium. Sardines with bones provide highly absorbable calcium that supports vascular elasticity, not arterial calcification, a distinction that becomes life or death as people age. Add in vitamin D, which regulates immune balance and inflammation at the genetic level. And you're no longer talking about a single nutrient. You're talking about a biological system working in harmony. Shockingly, sardines are also one of the most protein-efficient foods available, delivering complete amino acids that stabilize blood sugar and reduce inflammatory insulin spikes, something supplements can never do. This matters because chronic inflammation is often driven not by one deficiency, but by metabolic chaos, and whole foods correct multiple pathways at once. Epidemiological data consistently shows that populations consuming small fatty fish have lower rates of heart disease, stroke, and cognitive decline, even when total fat intake is high. That flies directly in the face of modern nutrition marketing, which teaches people to isolate nutrients instead of respecting how the body actually uses them. Sardines don't need a label, a health claim, or a warning disclaimer because they arrive with built-in safeguards that no capsule can replicate. This is why real anti-inflammatory nutrition doesn't come from a bottle. It comes from foods that evolved to nourish human biology long before supplements ever existed. Most people believe meaningful health change requires extreme diets, expensive supplements, or years of discipline. But biology tells a very different story. Your body responds not to intensity, but to consistency. Inflammation doesn't spiral out of control overnight, and it doesn't resolve through one heroic intervention. It shifts quietly, cell by cell, meal by meal, based on the signals you send it repeatedly. Research shows that omega-3 fatty acids integrate into cell membranes gradually, and once they're there, they stay, reshaping how your immune system reacts to stress, injury, and aging. Studies demonstrate that consuming modest amounts of EPA and DHA just a few times per week is enough to measurably change the fatty acid composition of red blood cells within weeks, a biomarker strongly linked to lower cardiovascular risk and reduced systemic inflammation. This means you don't need megadoses, you need rhythm. One small can of sardines delivers a concentrated pulse of omega-3s that nudges your biology in a new direction every time you eat it. Over time, those nudges compound. In clinical trials, people who consumed omega-3-rich fish multiple times per week saw reductions in C-reactive protein, triglycerides, and inflammatory cytokines without changing total calories or exercise routines. That's staggering because it reveals that inflammation is often less about excess and more about imbalance. When omega-3 intake increases consistently, the body begins producing more resolvins, compounds that actively shut down inflammatory responses and accelerate tissue repair. Pain sensitivity decreases, blood vessels become more flexible, insulin signaling improves. Even brain inflammation, now implicated in depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline, shows measurable improvement. What's shocking is how little it takes. Researchers have found that even low-dose food-based omega-3 intake can stabilize arterial plaques, making heart attacks less likely without lowering cholesterol at all. That's because inflammation, not cholesterol alone, determines whether plaques rupture. This is why populations that eat small, fatty fish regularly experience lower rates of heart disease despite wildly different lifestyles. The power isn't in perfection, it's in repetition. Each serving reinforces the last, gradually replacing inflammatory fats stored in tissues that may have accumulated over decades. And because sardines are nutrient-dense, they don't spike blood sugar or drive overeating, two silent accelerants of chronic inflammation. This creates a feedback loop where metabolism becomes calmer, hunger becomes more predictable, and energy stabilizes. The body begins to trust its environment again. Long-term studies consistently show that dietary patterns built on simple, repeatable behaviors outperform short-term interventions when it comes to reducing disease risk and extending health span. The most dangerous myth in nutrition is that small actions don't matter. In reality, they matter the most because they're the only ones that last. One can 3 or 4 times a week doesn't feel dramatic, but biologically, it's a message sent again and again, telling your immune system to stand down, your cells to repair, and your body to move toward balance instead of breakdown. Over time, that message becomes the new default.